Apenas nos pusimos en dos pies y nos vimos en la sombra de la hoguera. Escuchamos la voz del desafío, siempre miramos el río, pensando en la otra ribera.
El Paso, Texas, the U.S.-Mexico border, the line between two different worlds which begin to blend the closer in proximity they become. If it were an abstract painting, the U.S. and Mexico would show up on a canvas in radically different colors and textures. Yet I imagine the artist would take her hand and smear it at the place the two countries conjoin, leaving the area of Juarez, El Paso, particularly indistinguishable. Just as the two cities look like from a bird's eye view. Juarez, El Paso is an environment of effortless pluralism, the type of pluralism that has sparked nationalist hysteria throughout our country. But I view it as beautiful, perhaps even anthropological art smeared by the hand of God. Border historian Oscar J. Martínez characterizes U.S.-Mexico borderlands as a place with powerful transnational forces which pull large numbers of borderlanders into the orbit of the neighboring country, with a resulting array of cross-boundary relationships and cross-boundary lifestyles. I, too, along with my colleague Matt, made this trip to the border with Brite Divinity School, which featured a week full of powerful interactions with numerous borderlanders from all walks of life, from clergy to activists to academics to refugees. In one moment, I found myself praying in a federal courthouse as approximately 30 migrants and refugees, many of whom were barely over the age of 18, be simultaneously sentenced to prison or deportation. One truly transformative person we encountered on this visit was when we went to the Border Farm Workers Center and met its executive director, Carlos Martínez. Martínez has often been compared to his late colleague and mentor, having been called the Cesar Chavez of the West. The U.S. has a long history of abuse and exploitation of migrant farm workers, from physical abuse to employers' failure to pay already minuscule wages. Carlos was quick to give us information chronicling the history of such exploitation, which frequently goes unpublished. He included this picture of workers being sprayed with the pesticide DDT at the border as part of the Bracero program in the 1950s. Martínez has made it his life's work to advocate on behalf of migrant farm workers to prevent such abuses from occurring. Talking with him was also a powerful reminder of how deeply intertwined our realities are with the workers. For starters, our food. He pulled out a bucket of chili peppers as a physical example of the painstaking and thankless labor that goes into nourishing our bodies. So striking that someone's physical pain could manifest in my physical nourishment. Martínez also provided some insight regarding the causes of such a magnanimous wave of migration. He explained that most agricultural land in Mexico operated under the ejido system, meaning most of it was community-owned. Such a foreign concept in our capitalist society. The ejido system began to decline mid-20th century when the World Bank created dependencies on loans for farming technology and died with the North American Free Trade Agreement in 1994, championed by then-President Bill Clinton. Allowing U.S. corporations to negotiate with Mexico's financial elite, the U.S. demanded that the ejido system be abolished from Mexico's constitution. Think about that. American corporations managed to change another country's constitution. Allowing foreign interests to buy those lands and force its inhabitants to either leave or work for a fraction of the rewards. And it wasn't just Mexico. Comparable trade policies have been acted elsewhere, devastating thousands of self-sustaining communities across Latin America, because that is what capitalism inherently does. NAFTA ushered in an unprecedented level of prosperity for much of the U.S. and unprecedented levels of poverty for Mexico. In that, I have to acknowledge that the money in my pocket and the food that I eat is tainted. But while this exploitation of citizens might have brought immediate gratification for us, there are long-term ramifications for us too. This caused millions of workers in Mexico to come to the U.S. to seek work, ramping up what is often referred to as the immigration crisis. We caused it. This ultimately led to a nationalist backlash and Trumpism, which has certainly sent many of us into a frenzy. More so, these policies boosted the agricultural industrial complex, which is now one of the leading contributors of climate change in the world. We heard Amazing Grace play earlier. A lot of people don't know the story behind that song. John Newton was a slave trader, and he experienced this moment of divine epiphany, as Matt talks about. Divine epiphany, or divine grace, if you will. Grace, not a term we like to use in universalism. But because of this moment, this magnanimous moment that he experienced, he became a staunch abolitionist for the rest of his life. Perhaps it's time for us to have such an epiphany. Universalism. What happens to one happens to all. The subjugation of laborers across the world that our country has helped cause has rendered us lost too. Lost in anxiety over our political climate, lost over the state of our planet. As Universalists, when we say our salvation is wrapped up in others, it's not just a theological abstraction, it's a reality. And when we speak of salvation, it's not of some hypothetical afterlife. It is here, now. Just as Juarez and El Paso, despite being on other sides of a fence and belonging to two separate human social constructions we call countries, they are the same from the perspective of our vast universe. With millions of migrants and refugees journeying toward their salvation, their literal saving, it behooves us to journey with them. Because in the long term, our saving is also contingent upon it. Because we are all migrants. Todos somos migrantes.